In the beginning there was no sky, no sea, no whisper of wind. There was no up, no down, no before, no after. There was only the endless, soundless void, so vast that even the word vast would be too small to describe it. And yet, in this absolute stillness, something stirred. Not a sound, not a shape, but an awareness. A pulse of existence. From that pulse came the first breath, not of air but of being. And thus was born Chaos, the first god. Chaos was not a figure of flesh, nor a titan of bone and muscle. It was a swirling presence, a boundless mist of possibility. Where it drifted, the nothingness seemed to hum. Where it pulsed, sparks of creation blinked into existence, then fizzled away. It was formless yet alive, nameless yet eternal. And in its first moments of being, Chaos felt something strange, loneliness. It was the only thing that existed, and in its endless eternity, it began to ache. It yearned not as a human yearns but as a storm yearns to break. The void was too still, too quiet. And so Chaos moved. Its vast, formless body stretched and twisted, its essence colliding with itself. The collision rang out like the first heartbeat in the universe, and from that beat, the void cracked open. Out spilled currents of energy that twisted and coiled like serpents, curling upon themselves until they began to take form. The first shapes were rough, unstable. Shadows emerged, flickering as though unsure they wanted to exist at all. They melted, reformed, and melted again as if testing the weight of being. Chaos watched this dance with something like wonder, and something like fear. From these restless shadows came the first children of the first god. Nyx, the night, unfurled herself like a cloak, wrapping the void in deep, velvety black. Her presence was soft but absolute, comforting and yet unnerving. Where Nyx moved, the void seemed to sigh, as if at last it had a place to rest. With Nyx came Erebus, the deep darkness, heavier and older than even night. Erebus was silence given form, a fathomless abyss within the abyss, a weight that pressed down upon everything it touched. Together, Nyx and Erebus became the first siblings of the cosmos, the first companions to Chaos. But their arrival changed everything. The void was no longer pure nothingness. It had edges now, depth and texture. And in the meeting of night and darkness, something new appeared, a spark. It was small, barely there, but Chaos felt it immediately. It was desire. Desire was unlike anything before it. Where Chaos was stillness, desire was motion. It wanted. It reached. It ached. It burned. And where it burned, it created something no one had seen before. Light. Light spilled out like a river of gold, tearing through the dark. For the first time, shadows leapt back. Nyx recoiled as her velvet cloak shrank away from the radiance, and Erebus rumbled, his depths suddenly shallow under the piercing glow. The universe was no longer one thing. It was two, then three, then many. There was night. There was darkness. There was light. And with light came the first glimmers of shape. Forms began to last longer before dissolving. There were places where the glow gathered and places where it hid, creating the first sense of where. Chaos, the first god, felt the change ripple through its essence. This was what it had yearned for: creation, motion, contrast. But with creation came conflict. Light did not wish to be swallowed by darkness. Darkness did not wish to be banished by light. And so they began to push against each other, endlessly. Where light surged, darkness fled, but only for a time. It would gather in a corner of the void, thicker, blacker, stronger, and return to swallow the glow. The two forces chased each other like hunters, like lovers, like eternal rivals. Chaos watched as its children collided again and again, filling the void with their wild dance. There was beauty in their clash, but also danger. The strain of their battle cracked the stillness of creation, pulling the fragile new shapes apart as quickly as they formed. Yet Chaos could not look away. This was the first conflict, the first story. It was the birth of rhythm, of rise and fall. Where before there had been only endless sameness, now there was tension, contrast, drama. Creation had taken its first breath, and it was gasping. From the clash of light and darkness came something even stranger: sound. The first echoes rang through the void, a deep booming as though the universe itself had a voice. The echoes became the first thunder, and the first thunder became the first song, raw and untamed but alive. But the dance of light and darkness was not just beautiful. It was dangerous. Their struggle threatened to unravel everything Chaos had set in motion. The shadows tore apart the glowing places, and the glow pierced holes through the night until it seemed the void might rip itself to pieces. Chaos felt the pull of destruction growing stronger. It could feel its own essence being stretched thin, as if the children it had birthed would tear it apart along with the void itself. It was then that the first god knew, this chaos, this endless struggle, could not be left to rage unchecked. It had given the universe its first breath. Now it would have to give it its first shape. And so chaos gathered itself. Its vast presence, scattered across the newborn cosmos, began to draw inward. The swirling mists contracted, coiling tighter, heavier, until chaos was a storm within itself. Lightning that was not lightning flashed across its essence. The void trembled, sensing that something greater than night, greater than light, was about to be born. The first god was preparing to act, and the act would change the universe forever. The newborn cosmos trembled. Light and darkness clashed like titans, roaring across the endless sky. Every surge of brightness was met by a flood of shadow, every retreat of night answered by a blaze of brilliance. The void had become a battlefield, and the noise of their war was deafening, a cosmic drumbeat that shook the very fabric of existence. Chaos, the first god, felt the pull of its own creation. Its essence was unraveling, stretched and twisted by the storm it had unleashed. It could not allow this dance to destroy all it had birthed. And so chaos did what no god had yet done. It chose. It gathered itself, drawing in every swirling mist, every tendril of its infinite presence, until it was no longer a boundless haze but a single, seething storm. The void around it shuddered as though bracing for what was to come. Nyx paused, her cloak of night rippling. Erebus, the deep darkness, fell silent. Even light itself seemed to falter, as though the cosmos was holding its breath. And then chaos spoke. Its voice was not a sound but a vibration that shook through every corner of the universe. It was the first command, the first decree. Enough. The word tore through the clash of light and darkness, and for the first time the two forces hesitated. Their endless chase slowed. Their collision softened. And in that pause, chaos began to shape something new. It poured its power into a form unlike anything before. A concept, not a being. A force that would stand between light and darkness, that would teach them to share rather than devour. This was order, the child of chaos's sacrifice. Order descended like a veil over the newborn cosmos. It did not silence light or smother darkness. Instead, it wove them together. It drew a line where night would begin and where day would end. It carved a path where the shadows could rest and where the glow could shine. It whispered rhythm into the void, and from rhythm came time. Time was the first true miracle. For the first time, moments did not simply exist all at once. They flowed. There was a before and an after. There was dawn and dusk. The universe no longer simply was, it was becoming. But this weaving came at a cost. Each strand of order that chaos spun was a strand of its own essence. The first god felt itself growing weaker, its storm dwindling as it gave away everything it had. Yet it did not stop. It shaped the sky so that it could hold the light. It shaped the depths so that darkness could have a home. It gave the winds a path to follow and the waters a place to gather. The chaos that had once threatened to tear the cosmos apart now became its heartbeat. The clash of light and darkness was no longer a war but a dance. The first sunrise, the first nightfall. And as the balance settled, something extraordinary happened. Where light touched the newly calmed earth, warmth bloomed. From that warmth, the first seeds of life stirred, not yet living but ready. Where darkness stretched, dreams began to take root, visions of things that would one day come to be. Creation itself had opened its eyes. Chaos, now nearly spent, drifted back to the farthest reaches of the cosmos. It was no longer the storm at the center of everything. It had become the quiet watcher, the silent witness. Its work was done, or so it thought. For from the calm it had created came new voices. From the earth that had settled under order's touch rose Gaia, the Earth Mother, her body the fertile soil and stone. From the vault of the sky appeared Uranus, the father sky, his breath the wind, his eyes the stars. They were the first of many, the builders of a new age. Titans and gods would follow, shaping mountains, carving oceans, raising storms, and painting the heavens with fire. But all of them, every god and mortal yet to come, would owe their existence to that first act of sacrifice. The moment when chaos gave up its endless freedom to give the cosmos its first shape. And so the story of chaos came to its quiet close. The first god faded into myth, a presence felt but rarely seen. The world remembered it not as a deity of rage or destruction, but as the womb from which all things were born. Yet its lesson remained. Even now, when the stars blaze overhead and night stretches across the world, when light and shadow meet at the edge of dawn, the echo of chaos can be felt. It is there in every storm that clears the sky, in every fire that turns to ash so that new life may grow. It is there in every moment of despair that gives birth to hope. The story of chaos is not just the story of the first god. It is the story of us all. It tells us that conflict is not always the end. It can be the beginning. That destruction can be the first step toward creation. That even in the darkest void, something new can stir, something that will change everything. So when you find yourself lost in the storm, when the light and shadow of your life seem to tear you apart, remember the first god. Remember that from chaos came the stars. From chaos came the earth. From chaos came the possibility of everything. And perhaps, in your own storm, a new world is waiting to be born.